Temporary service panel charge-out rates typically range between $100 to $250 per day. Whether an electrician rents a panel or absorbs the cost into their hourly rate depends on the electrician's business model and the length of time the temporary service panel is needed. Rental involves the electrician charging a daily or weekly rental fee for the use of the panel. Absorbing the cost into the hourly rate means the electrician includes the cost of the temporary service panel into their hourly rate for the duration of its use. The markup percentage on retail items varies depending on the electrician's business practices and industry norms. Typically, it ranges from 10% to 50%. Electricians incur additional costs associated with purchasing retail items, such as transportation, handling, and labor. The markup helps cover these expenses and provides a reasonable profit margin. For example, an electrician needs to install a temporary service panel for a customer for 3 days. The electrician's daily charge-out rate for temporary service panels is $125. The electrician's markup for retail items is 20%. The service panel rental fee would be $125 per day multiplied by 3 days, totaling $375. To calculate installation labor costs, multiply the hourly rate by the number of hours worked. Add any applicable retail item markups to determine the total cost. The actual cost to the customer will vary depending on the specific electrician's rates and the scope of work involved. When evaluating the cost of a temporary service panel, consider several factors that influence the final price. Firstly, the daily or weekly rental fee for the panel itself. This fee covers the electrician's investment in the equipment and its maintenance. Secondly, the labor costs associated with installing and removing the temporary service panel. This includes the time spent by the electrician and any assistance. Thirdly, any retail items purchased specifically for the job, such as wiring, connectors, or breakers. These items are typically marked up to cover the electrician's costs and profit margin. Fourthly, transportation costs associated with getting the temporary service panel and materials to the job site. This may include fuel, vehicle maintenance, and mileage. Fifthly, permit fees required by local authorities for installing a temporary service panel. These fees vary depending on the location and the scope of the work. Sixthly, administrative costs associated with managing the job, such as preparing invoices, tracking expenses, and communicating with the customer. Seventhly, the electrician's profit margin, which is the percentage of revenue that remains after all expenses have been paid. This margin is necessary for the electrician to stay in business and invest in new equipment and training. When comparing quotes from different electricians, be sure to ask for a detailed breakdown of all costs, including rental fees, labor charges, retail item markups, and any other applicable fees. This will help you make an informed decision and choose the electrician who offers the best value for your money. Additionally, consider the electrician's experience and reputation. A more experienced electrician may charge a higher rate, but they may also be able to complete the job more efficiently and with fewer problems. Before hiring an electrician, check their license and insurance to ensure that they are qualified to perform the work and that you are protected in case of any accidents or damage. In the realm of electrical work, understanding the nuances of pricing is crucial for both electricians and their clients. A temporary service panel, often required during construction or renovation projects, involves a unique set of cost considerations. Let's delve deeper into how electricians determine their charges for such services and the rationale behind retail item markups. Electricians typically employ two primary methods for charging out a temporary service panel: firstly, rental fees, and secondly, absorption into hourly rates. The choice between these methods hinges on several factors, including the duration of the project and the electrician's preferred business model. When opting for rental fees, the electrician establishes a daily or weekly rate for the use of the temporary service panel. This rate covers the cost of owning, maintaining, and transporting the equipment. It provides a transparent and predictable expense for the client, particularly suitable for projects with well-defined timelines. Alternatively, some electricians prefer to absorb the cost of the temporary service panel into their overall hourly rate. This approach simplifies billing and may be more attractive to clients seeking an all-inclusive price. However, it requires careful calculation to ensure that the hourly rate adequately covers the cost of the panel and associated expenses. The duration of the project plays a significant role in determining the most appropriate charging method. For short-term projects, absorbing the cost into the hourly rate may be more convenient. However, for longer projects, a rental fee may prove more cost-effective as it avoids inflating the hourly rate unnecessarily. The electrician's business model also influences the charging method. Some electricians prefer to focus on rental income, while others prioritize simplicity and transparency in their pricing. Ultimately, the choice depends on the electrician's individual preferences and the needs of their clients. Retail item markups are another common practice in the electrical industry, designed to compensate electricians for the additional cost associated with purchasing materials from retail outlets. These markups typically range from 10% to 50% and serve several important purposes. Firstly, they cover transportation costs. Electricians often need to travel to retail stores to purchase materials, incurring expenses such as fuel, vehicle maintenance, and time. The markup helps offset these costs. Secondly, they account for handling and storage. Retail items require careful handling and storage to prevent damage or loss. The markup compensates electricians for the labor and resources involved in managing these materials. Thirdly, they factor in labor costs. Purchasing retail items can be time-consuming, requiring electricians to research products, compare prices, and make purchasing decisions. The markup helps cover the cost of this labor. Fourthly, they provide a reasonable profit margin. Electricians are business owners who need to earn a profit to sustain their operations and invest in their future. The markup contributes to this profit margin. The specific markup percentage applied to retail items may vary depending on several factors, including the electrician's overhead costs, the availability of discounts, and the competitiveness of the market. Electricians who operate in areas with high overhead costs may need to charge higher markups to cover their expenses. Similarly, electricians who are unable to obtain discounts from suppliers may need to charge higher markups to maintain their profit margins. In highly competitive markets, electricians may need to lower their markups to attract customers. However, it's essential to ensure that markups remain sufficient to cover costs and provide a reasonable profit. To illustrate the cost calculation process, consider a scenario where an electrician installs a temporary service panel for a client for 3 days. The electrician charges a daily rental fee of $125 for the panel and a 20% markup on retail items. Firstly, calculate the service panel rental fee by multiplying the daily rate by the number of days the panel is used. In this case, $125 per day multiplied by 3 days equals $375. Secondly, determine the labor costs by multiplying the electrician's hourly rate by the number of hours worked on the project. For example, if the electrician charges $75 per hour and works for 8 hours, the labor cost would be $600. Thirdly, calculate the cost of any retail items purchased for the job. For example, if the electrician purchases $100 worth of wiring and connectors, the cost would be $100. Fourthly, apply the markup to the retail items. In this case, a 20% markup on $100 would be $20. Fifthly, add up all the costs to determine the total cost of the project. In this example, the total cost would be $375 for the rental fee, $600 for labor, $100 for retail items, and $20 for the markup, totaling $1,095. It's important to note that this is just an example, and the actual cost of a temporary service panel installation may vary depending on the specific circumstances of the project. Factors such as the complexity of the installation, the distance to the job site, and the availability of materials can all affect the final price. To obtain an accurate estimate, it's best to contact several electricians and request quotes. Be sure to provide them with as much information as possible about the project, including the duration of the project, the location of the job site, and any specific requirements you may have. When reviewing quotes, pay close attention to the details. Make sure that all costs are clearly itemized, including rental fees, labor charges, retail item markups, and any other applicable fees. Don't hesitate to ask questions if anything is unclear. By taking the time to understand the cost calculation process and compare quotes from different electricians, you can ensure that you get a fair price for your temporary service panel installation. Remember, the cheapest quote is not always the best option. Consider the electrician's experience, reputation, and insurance coverage before making a decision. A qualified and experienced electrician can ensure that the installation is done safely and correctly, minimizing the risk of problems down the road. In summary, charging for a temporary service panel involves a combination of rental fees or absorption into hourly rates, retail item markups, and other applicable costs. By understanding the factors that influence pricing and comparing quotes from different electricians, you can make an informed decision and get the best value for your money. Don't hesitate to ask questions and seek clarification to ensure that you understand all the costs involved. A well-informed decision will help you avoid surprises and ensure that your temporary service panel installation is completed successfully.